Airlines hitting some turbulence so far this year, as we've been discussing. United forecasting a first quarter loss due to the grounding of the Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes. JetBlue's Robin Hayes gearing up to step down as CEO. And meanwhile, Delta Airlines gets more cautious as it trims its 2024 earnings outlook. That's only scratching the surface as investors now await quarterly results from a slew of airlines. Here to discuss the journey ahead, we have Stephen Trent, Citi Managing Director and Equity Analyst. Stephen, it is always good to see you.
Pleasure to see you, and thank you for having me on.
Maybe we'll start, just what we were just discussing. So Boeing CEO David Calhoun, he's on Capitol Hill today. He's answering these questions. Beyond what it just means for United Alaska, Stephen, maybe just talk to us about what are the ripple effects of this for the broader industry, for the broader sector.
Absolutely. So I think as we look through the next several quarters at least, it's hard to believe that this is going to be the very last thing we hear about supply chain. So we've been through the pandemic. A lot of these companies, not just the OEMs, but the dozens of companies that supply them, it's been tough to find employees. It's been tough to find equipment. So as we move forward, there's already been issues out there. Of course, you have the door plug on the MAX 9. You have the fan blade issue on the turbofan engine. So I think going forward, do the airlines have confidence in the equipment? I would say that's still generally yes in terms of the answer, but I think time's going to tell in terms of the extent to which this slows down the train, helps the group grow capacity, and do you get any passenger feedback, negative feedback, from the incidents that we've seen recently. The hope is no, but maybe it's a little early to tell.
Well, and I guess maybe this question is a little early to ask, but how do you quantify the revenue hit to the airlines from having to ground some of these planes, but also, do we know yet if passengers are saying, I'm not going to book my flight right now while this is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of the bookings, probably that's still way too early to tell. When we think about what's been booked close in, the pipeline looks good. I think in terms of the potential earnings exposure, roughly speaking, kind of rule of thumb, we kind of think about every 1% reduction in available seat mile growth translates into roughly a 2% reduction in pre-tax earnings. So there could be some nuances around that with respect to where we happen to be with jet fuel prices and what have you. Then the other layer on top of that eventually is what kind of compensation, if any, do the airlines get for these problems? Are they going to get some cost reimbursed? That's possible. Are they going to get reimbursed for the revenue spill from all this capacity taken out? That's possibly a taller order.
And another big story I want to get your take on, Stephen, was JetBlue and Spirit. So the judge steps in and blocks that merger. One, were you surprised by that decision? And two, was that actually kind of a good thing for the big airlines there?
Yeah, so in terms of the decision itself, maybe not a total surprise, sort of reading the tea leaves in the 113-page ruling that came out last week. What this means for the bigger airlines, it's going to be interesting. JetBlue, I kind of think, is at a crossroads. So it tried to get the Northeast Alliance done. That didn't work. It's been pushing hard down the M&A path, which has probably taken a lot of time and a lot of legal fees. That's not 100% done at this point and might not be. So if one thinks about what are the potential implications for the rear cabins of some of the network majors, for example, or maybe some of the larger discount airlines like Southwest, there's potential dislocation from a competitor, all else equal, that maybe gives those players some advantage, even though maybe JetBlue's not that large an airline that it's going to be a big impact on them.
So we're sort of halfway through, I guess, when it comes to reporting here. I know you liked Delta Airlines before. We did get a disappointing outlook to some from the company. Are you still liking Delta at this point?
Absolutely am. And when we look at the various puts and takes there, why have the network airlines done better? It's revenue diversity. And if you look at Delta, one thing that really intrigued me when we looked at the fourth quarter, they said more than half of their revenue is coming from something other than main cabin. So that revenue diversity is very important. The entire group is facing higher seat mile costs, so I don't think that's going to change for anybody. So if you can actually maintain that momentum on the revenue side, things like co-branded card and loyalty, that's helping Delta to de-risk its earnings stream. And when we look at the reaction, I kind of think it was a bit of an overreaction. Delta Airlines possibly puts up $4 billion in free cash flow this year. I don't know when the last time that anybody saw a network airline with a double-digit free cash flow yields. I'm a little surprised the street hasn't gone on to that.
And Steve, I want to get you out in this tomorrow, right? More news from your sector, earnings from American and Southwest, I think. You're neutral on both those names. What would it take to get you more bullish?
Yeah, so I think, in terms of giving the industry answer on that, you've seen a bunch of puts and takes on the cost side. So one of the things that we recently saw, for example, in Southwest case, they were the last major airline to reach an agreement with their pilots. So we should see some pressure on ex-fuel CASM. At the same time, it's conceivable that we see a little bit more modest momentum in the domestic market. So assuming that our expectations for domestic market momentum are too cautious, that's something, for example, that could take us to lead us to take a second look.
Steve, Trent, always good to get some time with you. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.